I don't exist on LinkedIn anymore. Google my name and you'll find a mechanic in Phoenix and some guy who died in a fishing accident in Alaska. That's exactly how the Department of Defense wants it now. My name is Andrew Sullivan. I'm 47, and until 6 months ago, I was the Chief Security Officer at Atlantic Defense Systems, one of the biggest defense contractors on the East Coast. 20 years in the Navy taught me that rules aren't suggestions. They're the difference between mission success and congressional hearings. Nuclear submarines don't tolerate shortcuts, and neither should national security. But I learned the hard way that corporate America has different priorities. The morning everything started falling apart, I walked into my windowless office carrying a stack of medical bills and the weight of my wife Michelle's stage 2 breast cancer diagnosis. The oncologist had been clear: aggressive treatment, 6 months of chemo, and I needed to be there. We'd been married 22 years, and I wasn't about to let some corporate deadline take priority over her life. My desk was organized with military precision, every document in its place, security logs updated daily. But Jennifer Ward, our 35-year-old program director, was leaning against my doorframe like she owned the place. Jennifer got her MBA from some school that advertises during daytime TV and thinks disruption is a business strategy. She'd been fast-tracked to management because she spoke the corporate buzzword language fluently, not because she understood defense contracting. "Andrew, the backbone of our operation," she said, her voice echoing off the soundproof walls. "We need to discuss next month's audit timeline. The $400 million Aegis contract." Corporate's breathing down my neck about the DCSA review schedule. She gestured toward the medical appointment reminders on my desk like Michelle's cancer was a scheduling inconvenience rather than a fight for her life. "The Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency review is 8 weeks out," I said, logging into my workstation with my 24-character password. "Everything's green across the board. I completed the preliminary security posture assessment last night. All clearance holders are current. Document handling procedures are compliant." Right. "You're thorough," she laughed, but it sounded forced, like someone practicing for a performance. "But here's the thing. Corporate's concerned about operational continuity. With Michelle's treatment schedule and your potential family leave, we can't have our CSO unavailable during a federal audit. This contract keeps 2,000 people employed." I stopped typing. The cursor blinked steadily, like a heartbeat on life support. "You mean the Family Medical Leave Act that I'm legally entitled to under federal law?" "Semantics, Andrew. We need to be proactive. I'm thinking we start transitioning some of your security responsibilities early. Get Ryan Torres up to speed, maybe cross-train him on the classified systems access." I looked across the bullpen to Ryan's desk. 26 years old, fresh out of college, and his biggest accomplishment was figuring out our new network printer. The kid had a secret clearance that barely qualified him to handle routine administrative documents, let alone manage top-secret SCI weapons systems data. "Ryan doesn't have TS-SCI eligibility," I said, my voice dropping to the register I used to use when explaining reactor safety protocols to overconfident ensigns. "He's not qualified to be acting CSO. The Pentagon auditor expects my signature on classified weapons specifications. If they see Ryan's credentials on SAR data, we don't just lose the contract, we face federal prosecution for security violations." Jennifer's corporate smile started cracking around the edges. "You're being inflexible, Andrew. That's always been your problem. You think following every regulation is more important than business continuity. The real mission is keeping this division profitable. We need team players who understand the bigger picture." "The mission is protecting national security," I said, turning my chair to face her fully. "And my wife's cancer treatment isn't a flexibility issue. It's life and death. I'll prepare comprehensive transition documentation for a qualified interim CSO when we identify one. But I'm not transferring my security tokens to an uncleared junior analyst because you're uncomfortable with proper federal protocols." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Jennifer stared at me for a long moment, and in that silence I heard the hum of classified servers and the distant sound of my career being fed into a paper shredder. "Okay, Andrew," she said finally, her voice taking on a predatory edge. "Handle it your way. Just make sure everything's documented properly. Corporate wants full accountability." She walked away, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume and corporate backstabbing. I put my hand on Michelle's latest pathology report. The cancer markers were responding to initial treatment, but the chemotherapy was brutal. She needed me focused on her recovery, not fighting bureaucratic wars with someone who viewed federal security regulations as suggestions rather than laws. But when I tried to access the HR portal to update my family leave documentation, my access credentials were grayed out. System maintenance, probably. Though in the defense contracting world, there are no coincidences. Only attack vectors you haven't identified yet. I spent the rest of that day doing what 2 decades in the Navy had trained me to do. I documented everything. Every email exchange, every conversation, every time Jennifer looked at me like I was the problem instead of the solution. In submarine warfare, intelligence preparation saves lives. In corporate warfare, it saves careers. What I didn't realize was that Jennifer had already made her decision, and the next 8 weeks would test everything I'd learned about fighting, battles where the rules of engagement weren't clearly defined. The following week, the office atmosphere shifted from passive-aggressive to something that felt like being under surveillance in a hostile foreign country. It wasn't anything you could document for HR, just the kind of psychological warfare that corporations excel at when they want someone gone. When I walked into morning briefings, conversations would die mid-sentence. When I sent routine requests for updated security documentation to the proposal team, I'd get read receipts but no actual responses. People whose clearance applications I had personally shepherded through the federal approval process were suddenly treating me like I carried some contagious disease. I sat in my ergonomic chair, currently the only thing in the building providing any support, and reviewed the DCSA audit preparation checklist. 8 weeks wasn't a luxury timeline, but it was workable if everyone did their jobs properly. The problem was that properly and Jennifer Ward's management style existed in parallel universes. Michelle's first chemotherapy session was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I'd blocked my calendar and submitted the family leave documentation through proper channels, or tried to. My HR system access was still mysteriously malfunctioning, which meant I couldn't officially file the paperwork that would protect my job while I took her to treatments. That's when Jennifer called the friendly check-in meeting. Outlook pinged with a calendar invite that looked innocent enough. Subject: Operational Continuity Planning Session. Location: Conference Room B. Attendees: Jennifer Ward, Craig Martinez, HR Director, and me. No agenda attached, which in corporate speak translates to ambush incoming. I'd learned in submarine warfare that meetings without agendas are usually torpedo attacks disguised as diplomatic discussions. Conference Room B was Jennifer's territory, all glass walls and corporate motivational posters about excellence and synergy. She wasn't alone. Craig Martinez sat beside her like a loyal attack dog. Craig had been with the company for 15 years, long enough to perfect the art of protecting corporate interests while maintaining plausible deniability about employee rights. "Andrew, thanks for making time," Jennifer said, gesturing to a chair positioned noticeably lower than theirs, a classic power play I'd seen admirals use on junior officers. "We wanted to discuss transition planning." I remained standing. 20 years of Navy training doesn't evaporate because some corporate climber thinks furniture psychology will intimidate me. "We're genuinely concerned about you," Craig chimed in, his voice dripping with the kind of fake sympathy HR people learn in special workshops. Jennifer mentioned Michelle's diagnosis. "We want to ensure the company supports you while maintaining operational readiness." "My family leave request is straightforward," I said, keeping my tone professional. "Documentation follows federal guidelines. What specific concerns do you have?" "The concern," Jennifer interrupted, leaning forward with predatory focus, "is timeline risk. If Michelle's treatment gets complicated, and cancer treatment often does, and you're unavailable during the federal audit, we're potentially looking at contract suspension. That's $400 million and 2,000 jobs at stake." She paused for effect, like she was delivering a crucial plot point in a corporate thriller. "You need to transfer CSO credentials to me today. Full system access, security tokens, the complete package. I'll handle the role temporarily until you're back and we can hire a permanent backup." The words hung in the air like smoke from a weapons malfunction. I actually felt my blood pressure spike, not from anger, but from the sheer audacity of what she was proposing. "Jennifer," I said slowly, "you currently hold secret-level clearance. This contract requires top secret with sensitive compartmented information access. You are literally prohibited by federal law from accessing these systems. The computer won't even allow me to input your credentials without triggering security violations." Jennifer's corporate smile vanished completely. "I run this program, Andrew. I don't need lectures on federal regulations from someone who's planning to abandon his responsibilities during the most critical audit of the year." "Abandon?" The word came out sharper than I intended. Supporting my wife through cancer treatment is abandoning responsibilities? Look, Craig interjected, consulting his legal notepad like it contained sacred scriptures. Refusal to follow direct management instructions regarding business continuity can constitute grounds for immediate termination under company policy, and refusal to commit federal crimes, I shot back, is grounds for a whistleblower complaint under the False Claims Act. Would you like me to document this conversation as a formal request to violate the National Industrial Security Program Operating Manual? Because I can draft that memo right now and copy the Department of Defense Inspector General. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the HVAC system cycling and the distant hum of classified servers processing data that Jennifer would never be authorized to access. Jennifer's face had turned an interesting shade of red, the kind corporate executives get when their authority is challenged by people who actually understand the regulations they're trying to circumvent. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth. "Handle it however you think best, Andrew. But remember, this company values team players who find solutions, not obstacles. We'll expect comprehensive transition documentation within the week." I walked out of that conference room knowing I'd won a battle but probably lost the war. Jennifer wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully, and Craig was already mentally drafting the termination paperwork that would make my firing look legitimate on paper. Back at my desk, I tried logging into the main server to back up my email correspondence from the meeting. Access denied. Account suspended pending administrative review. Contact your system administrator. They were systematically cutting my digital lifelines, isolating me from the very systems I was supposed to be protecting. Classic corporate warfare. Deny access, create documentation gaps, then claim incompetence when the victim can't perform their duties. I opened my physical safe, a military-grade security container that only I had the combination to, and began extracting hard copies of every security audit, clearance approval, and compliance record from the past year. If they wanted to lock me out of the digital world, I'd make sure the paper trail told the complete story. My personal phone buzzed with a text from Michelle. "Chemo moved to Thursday. Dr. Morgan wants additional blood work first. Love you." I stared at the message, calculating timelines. Jennifer would probably make her move before Michelle's treatment started. Corporate predators always strike when they think their victims are most vulnerable. What Jennifer didn't understand was that vulnerability can be a tactical advantage if you're prepared to use it properly. 3 days later, the inevitable happened. I arrived at the office to find my badge access had been revoked overnight. The security guard, Tommy Martinez, a good guy I'd known for 5 years, looked embarrassed as he handed me a temporary visitor pass. "Sorry, Andrew. Orders from upstairs. Something about a security review." Security review. That was rich, coming from people who wanted to hand classified weapons data to someone with a secret clearance. I made it to my office to find a manila envelope on my desk. Corporate letterhead, HR seal, the works. Inside was a termination letter that was a masterpiece of legal language designed to avoid lawsuits. "Dear Mr. Sullivan, due to operational requirements incompatible with your current personal circumstances, your employment is terminated effective immediately. This decision reflects business continuity needs during critical contract periods. Operational incompatibility. They'd found a way to fire me for having a wife with cancer without actually saying it. But Jennifer had made one critical error. In her rush to get me out before I could cause problems, she'd forgotten that someone still needed to actually manage security for the audit. And with only 5 weeks left before the DCSA review, there was no time to get anyone properly cleared. I grabbed my personal items, family photos, Michelle's appointment reminders, and a coffee mug from my old submarine, and walked out with as much dignity as I could muster. But I wasn't leaving empty-handed. The previous night, I'd made copies of every security violation report, audit discrepancy, and compliance issue from the past 18 months. 20 years in the Navy had taught me that intelligence, preparation, wins wars. I drove home to Michelle, who was reading on the couch between nausea waves from her second chemo session. She looked up as I walked in at 10:30 a.m., still wearing my suit. "How was work?" she asked, then saw my expression. "Oh." Jennifer found her excuse, I said, sitting beside her. "Terminated for operational incompatibility." Michelle was quiet for a moment, then smiled grimly. She has no idea what she just did, does she? Not yet, but she will. I spent the next 2 days setting up my war room in our home office. Michelle would bring me coffee and sandwiches while I organized evidence into timelines. The discrimination, the illegal security requests, the systematic isolation, the wrongful termination. But I needed confirmation that Jennifer was actually going to attempt the fraud. Corporate executives talk big, but following through on federal crimes requires a special kind of stupidity. I called Scott Warner, my old mentor from my first Pentagon assignment. Scott had spent 30 years in naval intelligence before transitioning to the CIA, then retiring to consult on defense security issues. If anyone understood how these systems worked, it was him. We met at Frank's Diner off Route 50, the kind of place that serves real coffee and doesn't care if you occupy a booth for 3 hours discussing classified system vulnerabilities. So they cut you loose right before a major audit, Scott said, cutting into eggs over easy with surgical precision. That's either impressive stupidity or brilliant strategy. Which do you think? Stupidity. Jennifer needs someone to sign off on classified documents, but she can't get anyone cleared in 5 weeks. Background investigations take 6 months minimum for TS-SCI. She has to pretend I'm still active, just on medical leave. Scott nodded thoughtfully. So she'll list you as the CSO on the audit paperwork, then hope the auditor doesn't ask too many questions. Exactly. False statements to federal investigators. That's Title 18, Section 1001. 5 years in federal prison. I still have contacts in the DCSA regional office, Scott said, wiping his mouth with a paper napkin. Can't get you the actual audit file, that's classified, but I can find out who they've listed as the primary security contact. 2 days later, Scott texted, "Ghost confirmed. Your name's on the paperwork." I stared at the message, feeling a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. Jennifer had done it. She'd officially committed federal fraud by representing me as an active employee on documents submitted to the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency. I walked to my evidence wall and pinned Scott's text next to Jennifer's termination letter. The trap was set. But I needed an inside source, someone to tell me when the auditor arrived and when the hard questions started. That's when I thought of Ryan Torres. Ryan was scared, overwhelmed, and desperately trying to impress Jennifer. More importantly, he was young enough to overshare on social media without thinking about operational security. I found his Instagram account. Recent post, a picture of late-night pizza boxes with the caption, "Audit Prep Grind." Jennifer's got us rewriting security logs to fix timeline gaps. Defense contractor life, rewriting security logs. They weren't just committing document fraud, they were actively tampering with federal security records. Jennifer was digging herself so deep she was going to hit bedrock. I sent Ryan a direct message, keeping it friendly. Saw your pizza post. Don't let Jennifer work you too hard during audit prep. Remember, if timestamps don't match server records, auditors always catch it. Just looking out for you. Read immediately. Typing indicators appeared, stopped, started again. Andrew. OMG, it's insane here. Jennifer's freaking out because the audit's next week. She's using your old login credentials, made it to reset your password. She said you're working remotely because of Michelle's medical stuff. That's okay, right? No, Ryan, that's definitely not okay. That's impersonation of a federal security officer, unauthorized access to classified systems, and conspiracy to commit fraud. But keep talking. Just document everything carefully, I replied. When the auditor shows up, make sure you tell him exactly who's actually in the office. The audit was scheduled for Monday morning. Michelle's treatment had been moved to Tuesday, which meant I'd be free to watch Jennifer's world collapse in real time. I spent that weekend making final preparations. Every piece of evidence cataloged, every timeline verified, every federal regulation cross-referenced. Scott had given me the direct number for the DCSA Inspector General's office, a hotline that took security violations very seriously. Sunday night, I sat with Michelle on our back porch, watching the sun set over the neighborhood that my defense contractor salary had helped us afford. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, holding my hand. "Once you make that call, there's no going back." "They fired me for wanting to take care of you," I said. "Then they committed federal crimes to cover up their incompetence. Some bridges are supposed to burn." Monday morning, I positioned myself at a coffee shop across the street from Atlantic Defense Systems, with a clear view of the visitor parking lot. At 8:45 a.m., a black government sedan pulled up. A man in a gray suit emerged, carrying a briefcase and walking with the unmistakable gait of a federal auditor. Agent Lance Cooper. I recognized him from previous audits. He was known for being thorough, methodical, and completely intolerant of security violations. Jennifer was about to meet her match. My phone started buzzing at 9:15 a.m. Ryan's messages were coming in like battlefield reports. Cooper's here. Jennifer's sweating through her blazer. They're in conference room B reviewing documentation. 9:45 a.m. Document review phase. Cooper's asking about security log discrepancies. Jennifer keeps saying, it's software issues. 10:30 a.m. Cooper's not buying the software excuse. He's asking detailed questions about access protocols. Jennifer looks like she's about to throw up. 11:00 a.m. This is it. Cooper just asked to speak directly with the chief security officer. Jennifer said you're working remotely due to family medical issues. She's giving him your old desk phone number. My heart rate spiked. Jennifer was about to cross the final line, impersonating a federal security officer during an official investigation. Instead of calling the Inspector General hotline, I did something more elegant. I called the main facility number. Atlantic Defense Systems, security desk, Tommy answered. Tommy, it's Andrew Sullivan. I think I left some personal items in my office. Could you transfer me to conference room B? I need to clarify something with whoever's in there. Sure thing, Mr. Sullivan. Hold on. Tommy didn't know about the termination. He just knew me as the CSO who'd helped him get his clearance upgraded last year. The phone rang once, twice. Then the conference room speaker clicked on. Yes? Jennifer's voice, tight with stress. Hello, Jennifer, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the conference room speaker system. This is Andrew Sullivan. I'm calling to clarify something for the record. Dead silence. Complete audio vacuum. Since I was terminated from Atlantic Defense Systems 3 weeks ago, and my security clearance has been administratively suspended, I'm confused about why my name appears on documents you're currently presenting to the federal auditor. Could you explain that? A different voice cut through the static. Who is this? This is the former chief security officer, Agent Cooper. The person sitting across from you just committed federal fraud by representing me as an active employee with current security clearance. I'm currently in possession of documentation proving systematic violations of the National Industrial Security Program Operating Manual. I paused, letting that sink in. Would you like me to bring my evidence folder over to discuss this properly? The line went dead. Jennifer had hung up. Through the coffee shop window, I watched conference room B like it was a nature documentary. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the blinds snapped open violently. A silhouette, Jennifer, was frantically looking out across the parking lot. I raised my coffee cup in a small salute. My phone erupted with messages from Ryan. Holy shit, Andrew, what did you do? Cooper just slammed his folder shut. He's on his phone with someone. Looks like FBI. Jennifer's face is completely white. There are federal agents walking into the building right now. I didn't reply. I was watching a convoy of black SUVs pull into the visitor lot. When classified facilities are compromised, the federal response is swift and overwhelming. I drove home to Michelle, who was having a good day between chemo cycles. She was organizing our medical bills at the kitchen table, calculator in hand. How did it go? She asked, looking up from insurance paperwork. Better than expected, I said, sitting down across from her. Jennifer just learned that federal auditors don't appreciate being lied to. What happens now? Now we wait for the lawyers to call. The call came 6 hours later, not from Jennifer or Craig, but from Kevin Brennan, Atlantic Defense Systems General Counsel. His voice sounded like he'd been gargling gravel in panic. Mr. Sullivan, this is Kevin Brennan representing Atlantic Defense. We need to discuss the events of this morning. Which events specifically? I asked, putting the phone on speaker so Michelle could listen. The part where your program director committed federal fraud, or the part where she impersonated a security officer during a federal investigation. There seems to have been a misunderstanding about your employment status. Mr. Brennan, I'm currently holding a termination letter dated 3 weeks ago. Unless Atlantic Defense has invented time travel, there's no misunderstanding about my employment status. Long pause. Legal wheels turning. We'd like to discuss a resolution, perhaps reinstatement, back pay, a comprehensive settlement package. I looked at Michelle, who was smiling despite her fatigue from treatment. Mr. Brennan, I'm on family medical leave caring for my wife. You can discuss settlements with my attorney. I'll have him call you. I hung up and immediately dialed Brian Mitchell, a former JAG officer who specialized in whistleblower cases. Brian had helped 3 other defense contractors navigate federal fraud investigations. He understood both the military mindset and corporate desperation. We met the next day while Michelle was at treatment. Brian reviewed my evidence with the methodical precision of someone who'd prosecuted court-martials. "Andrew, this isn't just wrongful termination," he said finally. "This is a textbook False Claims Act case. Your former employer made false statements to obtain federal contracts. The potential recovery could be triple damages. As the whistleblower, you're entitled to between 15 and 30% of whatever the government recovers." What kind of numbers are we talking about? Conservatively, the $400 million contract will be suspended pending investigation. If they determine systematic fraud, which seems likely given the evidence, we could be looking at $50 to $100 million in penalties and recoveries. The math was staggering. Even at the low end, my whistleblower percentage would secure Michelle's treatment and our family's future. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new office, a converted bedroom in our house that served as headquarters for Sullivan Security Consulting. Michelle's cancer was in remission, and my veteran-owned business was thriving. Turns out, defense contractors really want security advice from someone who's seen what happens when you cut corners. The final settlement had been everything Brian promised. Atlantic Defense Systems paid $85 million in penalties and damages. My whistleblower award was $22 million. But more importantly, Jennifer Ward was permanently barred from working in defense contracting, and new federal guidelines now required redundant security officer coverage during family medical leave. My phone rang. Another prospective client, a senior engineer at an aerospace firm who was being pressured to approve faulty wing components. "Don't sign anything," I told him. "Start documenting everything. Date, time, who was present. Email summaries to your personal account. And remember, your integrity is worth more than their convenience." The Andrew Protocol was becoming standard procedure in my corner of the defense world. That evening, Michelle and I sat on our back porch, watching the sunset over the neighborhood that whistleblowing had secured. She was cancer-free, and I was building something meaningful from the wreckage of Jennifer's arrogance. "Any regrets?" Michelle asked. I thought about Jennifer, last I'd heard working as a junior analyst at a small consulting firm, her security clearance permanently revoked. I thought about Atlantic Defense, now operating under federal oversight after losing their facility clearance. "None," I said. "Some bridges deserve to burn. The $400 million contract was history. The corrupt executives were gone. Justice had prevailed. And me? I was just getting started."